that it's people like you and people like me, very ordinary, full of our own sense of weakness and failures and poor histories, are the very people that God gets hold of.
In this special series, we have traveled a long way to the land of the Bible to experience Christ together in the places where He walked and lived.
This is Living Truth.
This is Living Truth in Israel. In this special series, we have traveled a long way to the land of the Bible to experience Christ together in the places where He walked and lived. Whether with crowds, with His disciples, or alone, Jesus had so much to teach us. And what a beautiful opportunity to learn from the Word of God and enrich our faith. This is Living Truth.
This message from Charles Price was recorded on the shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel and is called Disciples. This is Living Truth.
As we go into the Word of God, it's not to talk about God so much as to hear His voice speaking to us. And I'm going to read Mark chapter 3 and verse 16 to verse 19. I felt it would be valuable to look at these 12 disciples who accompanied Jesus on those journeys. Along with them, where there were some women who seemed to accompany Him most of the time. And their names are given to us in Mark 3 and verse 16. Let me read them to you again. These are the 12 He appointed: Simon, to whom He gave the name Peter; James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them He gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder; Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot. And always at the end of these 4 lists of disciples we have, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Him. What I want to do in looking at these is just realize that it's people like you and people like me, very ordinary, full of our own sense of weakness and failures and poor histories, are the very people that God gets hold of. He doesn't look for the strong and the mighty, He looks for the weak and the simple. And these are the means through which He does His work. The 7th on the list is Matthew. And you probably know that he was a tax collector sitting behind his tax collector's booth when Jesus came down the road and said to him, "Follow me." And it says that Matthew left his desk, his booth, and he followed Jesus. So why is he called Matthew? Well, Matthew means gift of God, as you probably know. And I don't know, but my speculation is that Levi, the tax collector, despised by people, when Jesus met him, said what He said to Simon Peter, when He said, "You are Simon, you will be called Peter." I wonder if He said, "You are Levi, but you will be Matthew, you will be a gift of God." And that despite all your failings and all your history and all the antagonism there is against you, I want you to know, Levi, that you're a gift. And the marvelous thing about the Lord Jesus Christ is He takes people like Levi and makes him into a Matthew. People like you, like me. And He makes us a gift of God. So there's Matthew, and next in line after that comes Thomas. And Thomas, of course, is best known for his doubting after Jesus had risen from the dead and appeared to the other disciples. And Thomas was absent, and when he got back, they said, "Thomas, you'll never believe it, but Jesus is alive." And Thomas said, "You're right, I'd never believe it." "What do you mean He's alive? He was crucified 3 days ago." "Yeah, but Thomas, He appeared to us here in this room." Thomas, "I don't believe it. Unless I put my hands and my finger into where the nails were and my hand into his side, I will not believe. I like Thomas, and I like him because he was honest about his doubt. An honest doubter is much better than someone who feels obligated to believe certain things. We look back with history and we think that everybody would have found it very easy to believe Jesus, but that is not true. Do you know even his brothers, it says, did not believe him? There come moments when we recognize who Jesus Christ is, and it's not usually just by rational argument or by persuasion. I believe apologetics is an important process, but people don't get converted because of apologetics. You convince them Jesus rose from the dead. Okay? That doesn't do anything for people. You convince them there's a God behind this universe. Okay, that doesn't do much for people. What happened to Thomas and what happens to people with our doubts is that Thomas had to meet with Jesus personally. That's when his doubts were addressed and removed. Because there's a week later, this is after his resurrection, Thomas has gone a whole week saying, I just don't believe what these brothers are telling me. I just don't believe it. These other disciples. A week later, his disciples were in the house. Once again, and Thomas was with them. Jesus appeared amongst them. Then he said to Thomas, put your fingers here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And Thomas fell on his knees and said, my Lord and my God. You see, it's when people have a personal meeting with Jesus Christ that they become sure. Not by all the arguments we may well present. It's an impersonal experience because Christianity is not about intellectual conviction. Christianity is about personal relationship. Jesus defined eternal life. This is life eternal, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. This is what it's all about. It's knowing you, Father, he says, and knowing me, your Son. And that's why the work of the Holy Spirit is to reveal Christ to our hearts. And as he reveals Christ to our hearts, we become sure and we develop that living relationship with him. The verses that mean a lot to me, and I was talking to somebody here yesterday, and I talked about these verses, some of these verses that give us assurance that we belong to Christ. One is Romans 8, verse 16, where Paul says that the Holy Spirit bears witness with our spirits that we're children of God. How do you know you're a child of God? Because you've signed off on all the bullet points of doctrine? No, because something inside me is real. The Spirit of God lives in my heart. And Paul also said in Romans 5, verse 17, that the Holy Spirit sheds abroad the love of God in our hearts. That we know God loves us, not because we believe it, but because the Holy Spirit shows us, and something happens inside us that shows us. And Thomas, the doubter, had to meet with Jesus, and in meeting with Jesus, he was convinced. I do believe it's important that we present truth, of course. I spend my life doing it, that we present logical reasons for truth. But it is the Holy Spirit who alone opens people's eyes and gives them the understanding. And there may be some of us here this morning and you have doubts, and those doubts are entirely legitimate. Don't throw them out the window just because you're not supposed to have them. We do have doubt. We do live with doubt. But the answer to doubt is that personal relationship with Christ, which is where we are to focus our thoughts, our hearts, our intention, and out of that will come an assurance. Lots of things I may not know, lots of things we don't know, but I know this, that I've met with the living Christ. That was Thomas' answer to his doubt. Next on this list is James, the son of Alphaeus. He's the second James, because, of course, James, the brother of John, has already been mentioned. We don't know of anything that James ever said or ever did. He's just hanging around there, and then he drops out of the story in Acts chapter 1. And next on the list is similar, Thaddeus. You know, Thaddeus, he's one of my favorites because nobody knows who in the world Thaddeus is. The King James calls him Lebbeus, whose surname is Thaddeus. You know, he's a non-entity, seemingly. You know, everybody else, people know I'm just hanging around, don't seem to have much prominence of any kind. Not many people know my name. Well, these were part of Jesus' team. And there was Simon the Zealot. The Zealots, you know, were a political movement who were an independence movement, actually, who opposed the Roman occupation of Israel, who opposed paying taxes to the Romans, who organized a revolt at one stage in about AD 6, a major revolt of the Zealots, and they were overpowered by the Romans. The revolt was quickly crushed, but the spirit of the Zealots was kept alive for quite a while. And then there was, lastly, Judas Iscariot, who, as we know, became the betrayer. Whenever he occurs in the gospel, he's always connected with money. When Mary anointed Jesus in Bethany with costly ointment, Judas, you may remember, became indignant, and he objected and said, why wasn't his perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. It sounds very noble of Judas, but John adds this note. He didn't say this because he cared about the poor. He said this because he was a thief. As a keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. It's a very mixed bunch of people, isn't it? Very mixed bag of people. And there were some women with them also, as most of them seem to be called Mary. And in Luke 8, it mentions Mary Magdalene, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, Susanna, and many others. And these women were helping support him out of their means. They traveled with him. And in Mark 15, at the cross, it says there's another list. Mary Magdalene was there. Mary, the mother of Joseph, was there. Salome was there. And it says these used to follow him, provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who come up with him to Jerusalem. Jesus' treatment of women was remarkable in the light of the culture. They weren't called disciples. Culturally, that would have been unacceptable. It wouldn't have made sense. Jesus operated within the culture of his day, as we do. Though what he did was sow seeds that would free women, designed to, although actually sometimes would clamp down again, especially sometimes in the church itself. But there was a freedom, a love, an affirmation that he gave to them. And these bunch of extremely ordinary people are the people that he invited to become his disciples. Peter, the impulsive, loudmouthed, usually wrong, alongside Thaddeus, never said anything and nobody knew anything about. From Joanna, who was the wife of Herod's chief of staff, and so from the top drawer of Israelite society, to Mary Magdalene, the demon-possessed woman, from Magdala up here on the shores just outside Galilee. It was the arrogant James and John who wanted to bring fire down from heaven to destroy the enemies of Jesus, to the gentle, quiet, silent James, the son of Alphaeus. Simon the Zealot, the patriotic nationalist on the one hand, Matthew the tax collector on the other. Martha the activist, busy one, and Mary who was contemplative, who just liked to be quiet. Pessimistic Thomas, who doubted, and simple Philip. Loving John as he became, and deceitful Judas. I mean, these were all the men and the women who Jesus called together, ordinary people with ordinary strengths and ordinary weaknesses. And he made them something extraordinary, because the extra and the ordinary was going to be Christ himself. And in Acts chapter 3, you may remember that Peter came to the temple in Jerusalem. This is just after Pentecost. And there was a a man begging. And he asked Peter and John, they were together for money, and Peter looked at this beggar and said, "Look at me." Made eye contact, "Look at me." And then he said to him, "Silver or gold I do not have, but what I have I give you." And there's an important principle there. We can only give what we've got. If we don't know what we've got, we've nothing to give. So, I don't have any silver or gold to give you. My pockets are empty. But what I do have, I'll give you. And what I have is calculated to revolutionize your life. What have you got? In the name of Jesus of Nazareth, get up and walk. What I have is Christ. And it says in verse 7, taking him by the right hand, he helped him up, and instantly the man's feet and ankles became strong. He jumped to his feet, began to walk. He went with them into the temple courts, walking and jumping and praising God, and a great crowd gathered around to see what was going on. And it says in verse 12 that when Peter saw this, he said to them, "Men of Israel, why does this surprise you?" Well, of course it would surprise him. Why does this surprise you? Then he says this, "Why do you stare at us as if by our own power or godliness we made this man walk? Don't look at me. Don't call me a miracle worker. Don't write a book about this and call it the Acts of the Apostles, because I deny it's an act of an apostle. I didn't do this." He goes on to say, "The God of our fathers has glorified his Son Jesus," etc., that this is an act of the risen Christ who has now indwelt me, and I am in him, and he is in me, and therefore he is adequate for every eventuality I meet and every issue that I face with. And so do not look at me, because although I'm the agent, the source is not me, it is Christ. You see, you cannot explain a Christian purely in terms of their personality, purely in terms of their gifts, purely in terms of their abilities. We have all of those. But when we're living in that full Christian relationship with God, there are things that will be inexplicable apart from the fact Christ is in this person. Now, that person is fully aware of all their own weaknesses and failings and normalities and humanity. A man who's a great influence on me when I was young, man of God, died a few years ago now. He was in hospital having had a stroke. And Hilary and I went to see him. We went into his room. He was next to his bed in a wheelchair. He was about 80, 81, something like that. And as we talked to him, he said to us this, "I haven't known such spiritual warfare as I'm experiencing in this wheelchair." He said, "There are things I thought I had conquered years ago, decades ago, and they're back. I didn't know," he said, "my mind was so dirty." Before we left his room, he prayed. We prayed together, and when he prayed, his voice became strong. It had been frail, and he prayed as a man who knew God, because he did know God. We left his room. That's the last time I ever saw him. He died a couple of weeks later. And going out of his room into the corridor, we met a nurse coming the other way who was coming into his room. She told us we needed to leave by a certain time because they had to attend to him. And as we walked past this nurse, I said to her, "You look after him, won't you?" She said, "Oh, yes, we look after everybody here." I said, "I'm sure you do." I said, "But he's a very special man." And she stopped. We were passing. She stopped. She said, "You're right. He is, isn't he?" I said, "Well, we think so." She said, "So do we." She said, "The nurses love working with this man." His name was Alan Redpath. One of the nurses said, "Whenever I spend time with Alan Redpath, I come away feeling clean." And she said, the rest of us said, "That's it. There's something unusually clean about Alan Redpath." 10 minutes before, Alan was saying, "I've never known some spiritual warfare. I didn't know my mind was so dirty. I struggled with these temptations I thought I conquered years ago, and they're back with a vengeance." That's what he knows. That's what you will know. That's what I know. in your own hearts. But as you live in dependence upon Christ, as you live in obedience to him, the marvelous thing is other people see what you cannot see. It's like when Moses came on the mountain, his face shone with the glory of God. And Moses didn't know that. People saw it. It said Moses did not know his face shone with the glory of God. He'd been up the mountain getting the tablets of stone with the 10 Commandments. And having been with God, his face was shining. But when he got down to the valley, he discovered the Israelites had built a golden calf and were worshiping this golden calf. And Moses was so angry, he took a tablet of stone, he smashed them on the ground, had to go back up the mountain to get some more. But what a fool I am, he probably thought to himself. Spend this time with God. I come down, I lose my cool, I smash this thing, half the people are sick. What a fool I am. That'd be Moses sitting in his tent. If you went to the tent of any other Israelite who was there that day, you'd hear them saying things like this. Did you notice Moses' face? Wow, what was it about his face today? But he never saw that. Neither did Simon Peter, nor John, nor Matthew, nor Thaddeus, who presumably did something useful later. Neither will you. Don't be introspective. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, because what has happened now, he has come to live within you. Live within what? Your frail body? Yes, your frail body, with your frail soul, with your frail spirit, with your old nature living in there, fighting against the Spirit of God. You know, after Peter had done this man had been healed in Acts 3. And don't look at me. Don't blame me. Don't applaud me. Don't call me a miracle. I didn't do it. It's the Lord Jesus who did this. In Acts chapter 4, when they'd stood up courageously against the opposition, it says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ignorant men, they were astonished. By the way, the Greek for unschooled, ignorant men is egrammatio idiotis. Ungrammatical idiots is what that means. When they saw the courage of Peter and John, realized that they were ungrammatical idiots, they were astonished. Listen to this. And they took note. These men had been with Jesus. And they almost got it right. They said, something of Jesus has worn off on these men. We notice they've been with Jesus. Almost got it right. What they saw was not the influence of Jesus. They had been with Jesus. What they saw was Jesus himself living and working in them and through them. And you see, the wonderful thing about the Christian life, and whichever way God leads you and me, is we come to him with all our weakness and frailty and failures and sins and temptations and battles that weary us and get us tired. We come with all of that and we say, Lord, would you please have your way in me? And it doesn't mean all those things disappear, because they don't. We'll fight till the day we die. We'll be engaged in battle till the day we die. But Jesus in us will do things that we don't even recognize, don't even see what he's doing. But he's at work in us. And these ordinary people, once indwelt by the Spirit of the Jesus that got to know in those 3 years, went on to do extraordinary things. Not because of the influence merely of Jesus, but because of the very life of Jesus at work in them. And that is the Christian life, isn't it? We're not trying to come up with some to-do list to try harder, to be better, to adopt this method, this practice. There are all kinds of disciplines that are necessary. That is what makes us godly or spiritual. That is, we allow the Spirit of God within us to work through us. And it's in our weakness, in our frailty, in our failure that we don't need to be embarrassed about, don't apologize for. To say, God, this is who I am, and you know exactly who I am. Nothing about me takes you by surprise. These are my weaknesses. These are sins that are kind of the recurring sins that keep coming back to bug me. Well, that'll keep you humble as well. But I want you to have preeminence in my heart, in my life. I want to open my eyes to see where you might use me in other people's lives. I don't want to be able to measure because I can't measure it. I trust you. We walk by faith and not by sight. Does that make sense? Because in that list of men and women, probably every one of us will find our place.
St. George's Monastery hangs from the cliffs of the Wadi Kelt, a deep and narrow gorge that runs along the old Roman road from Jerusalem to Jericho. The road was probably the setting of the parable of the Good Samaritan, and the complex is literally carved into the sheer rock wall. This Greek Orthodox monastery was founded in 480 AD and became an important spiritual center in the 6th century under St. George of Kaziba. 14 monks were martyred here in 614 AD by the Persians, and their bones can be seen today in the monastery chapel.
I'd like to personally invite you to join me and the Living Truth family for an unforgettable experience as we explore the Rhine River in Germany. From September 10th to the 22nd, 2020, we'll cruise the historic Rhine River aboard our very own privately chartered Living Truth riverboat. We're calling this trip Awaken 2020, the Passion Play. Imagine a 12-day journey set in one of the most beautiful parts of the world, surrounded by a rich fellowship of like-minded travelers. Your faith will be ignited through new community and a fresh encounter with our God. Our trip concludes with a 2-day visit to the picturesque village of Oberammergau, Germany, nestled in the Bavarian Alps. If you're a returning traveler or a first-timer, we guarantee this will be an experience you will never forget.
Don't miss this incredible trip of a lifetime. Awaken 2020, a Rhine River boat cruise and the Passion Play.
To reserve your spot now, simply visit myawakenjourney.com for details or call 1-877-465-3442. Awaken 2020, the Passion Play. It's your time.
I encourage you not to miss this opportunity. Please join me and the Living Truth family on this amazing adventure.
It's inspiring to be in Israel, a land rich with history and spiritual significance. It brings to life the biblical accounts and lands them squarely in the lives of ordinary people like us. The culture and terrain may be different to ours, yet in many ways we're exactly the same. We are all in need of transformation, and we know that it's Jesus Christ at work in us who makes that happen. Join us next time for more clear biblical teaching on Living Truth.
To watch this message again, visit our website. Download transcripts, order DVDs and CDs, as well as our daily devotional, or sign up for our monthly newsletter. Online, you can sign up for podcasts. You can also join us on Facebook and YouTube. Join us next week for the conclusion of this Awaken series recorded on location in Israel with a message from Brett McBride called From Fear to Faith. This is Living Truth.